Voilà, tout d'abord, soyez...
Well, first of all, very warm welcome to all of you, representatives of the Luxembourg press. So indeed, our presidency is drawing to an end, 13th of November 2024 to the 14th of May. Up until now, the Luxembourg presidency has been guiding the Council of Europe, and we identified three priorities. First of all, the defense of the rule of law, democracy, promoting a concept of living together, and culture and sport as vectors of human culture. Now, to take stock, this morning, and I'm grateful to the Secretary General, we were able to do something quite specific, setting up a special tribunal to judge the crime of aggression against Ukraine. We've had an official request now from the Ukrainian authorities, a letter which was handed over to myself and to the Secretary General. And that was an important gesture. And quite honestly, discussions which we'll be having in a few hours' time in Turkey will allow us, I hope, to put an end to this butchery. We've seen thousands of deaths on both sides, and I hope that I'll put an end to this unilateral aggression on the part of Russia. And I said this just a week or two ago when I was in Lviv celebrating Europe Day. Now, we can't simply close our eyes and say that we are not going to look at those casualties and deaths, and we're seeing what will be very painful episodes for many families. Now, above and beyond that, we've also adopted a declaration on the protection of the profession of lawyer, and I'm delighted that so many countries have signed up to that. And as I said at the conference when we were presenting it to you, I can already tell you which countries will sign up and which won't. I mean, and it's very sad, really, to conclude that that is not always the case, whereas we're all members of an assembly based on shared values. We, of course, also support those who represent the democratic forces, and I said that at the informal dinner we had yesterday. Let's not forget that there is still an issue with human rights in Belarus. Let's not close our eyes to that. Now, we also will seek to protect activists and actors who are protecting human rights, and you count amongst them, ladies and gentlemen of the press. Journalists also help protect human rights and will also be seeking to protect the environment, and we also have a Council of Europe Convention adopted by the Committee of Ministers here today, very important. We've had 33 different meetings, events and conferences. We've had musical events and concerts, and we've had our ministers who've been on the move, just to show you how much the Luxembourg government has put into this Council of Europe presidency. Another very important priority for me personally was living together. We shouldn't just live alongside one another. We should live together, and we shouldn't speak about one another. We should speak to one another. And Mr. Engelberg, our ambassador, should be thanked for everything that he has done. We also organized a visit by the Committee of Ministers to the Struthof concentration camp in Alsace. It's very important that people be aware of our past and people realize why we're fighting for our values day in and day out. We also have a strategy on the rights of the child, and we have made sure that we've informed the Committee of Ministers of the importance of giving visibility to marginalized groups. And as a presidency, we've made sure that people with disabilities, as well as Roma and travelers, the kind of people who don't get to speak, usually have had an opportunity to have their voices heard. We also organize an exhibition on so-called undesirables. We also showed the persecution which was suffered by certain groups under the Nazis and discrimination, and some of those groups continue to be discriminated against. We've also given priority to culture as a vector of our values. We had a conference entitled No Culture, No Democracy, and that was to commemorate the anniversary of the European Cultural Convention in January of this year. We also celebrated Jewish Heritage Days under the aegis of the European Cultural Roots Center. And I think that all of our statements today have attested to what we've done. There are so many topical issues, but without a shadow of the doubt, the number one concern aired today has been Ukraine. And in recent days, we traveled to Ukraine. We went to Lviv as a tangible expression of our solidarity with the country. As I said on Europe Day, I was asked, why, Xavier, you so ignorant of history. I mean, it was Russia that liberated the concentration camps. Now, that is a fact. However, it should also be recalled that some countries paid a very high price for that because the Soviet Union divided the continent in two and gave very little space for freedom for the countries that are under its control. But nevertheless, the Soviet Union did help to liberate those countries. But at the same time, you go to Moscow and then you've got Russian aeroplanes and tanks and drones. Why would you go there and applaud such a military parade in the knowledge that those arms and weapons are going to be used against Ukraine in the very near future and possibly at some point in time against the Baltic states and possibly even Poland? So my rightful place was therefore not in Moscow, but it was in Ukraine, notwithstanding the Soviet Union's contribution to our history. And so that is why it's important to be well versed in history. And it is important not to look at countries in terms of their size, but in terms of their ability to convince their neighbors. And I believe that I have made it clear on several occasions that I consider myself fortunate to have grown up in an area of freedom and of peace, when our values appear to be such that we can take them for granted, that they have been achieved once and for all. But that is not the case, and it's certainly not the case for many of our colleagues. And I find that personally something that is motivating for myself as somebody from Luxembourg, somebody who is European and an internationalist. But I have to remind people that something that we have taken for granted here has become something that others have to fight for on a daily basis. Thank you very much.
Et je souhaite bonne chance à mon copain.
Oh, by the way, I wish my colleague from Malta every success.
I'd like to congratulate you for your excellent work, excellent efforts in the past 6 months in steering forward the Committee of Ministers, your country's firm commitment to the values of the Council of Europe, and also fostering the culture of living together. Leaves a solid foundation for which now my countries look forward to building on in the next 6 months. It's also with great pride and a deep sense of responsibility that we take on this mantle from Luxembourg, and it's now our 4th time since joining the Council of Europe 60 years ago. We are living in unprecedented times, marked with new and emerging social and geopolitical tensions and a myriad of pressing challenges. And as we discussed at our meeting today, it is precisely during such difficult times, marked by attacks on the multilateralism and international rules-based order, that the importance of our renewed commitment to dialogue, shared values of human rights, democracy, rule of law, becomes ever more pronounced. Throughout history, this Council has proven its agility and also readiness to meet global demands. And today, more than ever, it becomes evident that our collective action will define our common future and that of subsequent generations. Our presidency therefore comes at a particular delicate geopolitical time, for which we will be guided by our deep-rooted commitment to dialogue and multilateralism, while also leveraging on our expertise gained from recent experiences in the OSCE and UN Security Council. It also comes at a highly symbolic time as we are celebrating, as I mentioned earlier, the 60th anniversary as a proud member of this organization, shortly after becoming independent in 1964. The Council of Europe also celebrates the milestone, 75-year anniversary of the European Convention on Human Rights, which remains its backbone and cornerstone of human rights protection on our continent. So, during our presidency, the protection of children's rights and promotion of their best interest will be central political priority, marking the 15th anniversary of the Lanzarote Convention. Malta will convene an informal conference of ministers for children's rights to reaffirm collective commitments and drive forward a stronger coordinated response to addressing and preventing sexual exploitation and sexual abuse of children. As leader also in LGBTIQ rights, Malta will attach great importance to addressing the discrimination faced by such persons while promoting equality and inclusivity. Upholding human dignity will be at the center of Malta's efforts, as it also strives to raise awareness and strengthen the fight against violence against women, hate speech, hate crime, trafficking of human beings. Another important priority is empowering young people and also promoting the youth perspective with the aim of fostering youth's meaningful participation in decision-making processes. And therefore, flagship events such as the European Youth Work Convention and also the Specialized Conference of Ministers for Youth will provide us with a strategic platform for advancing this vision. At the justice level, Malta will spearhead efforts to strengthen cross-border judicial cooperation and also mutual legal assistance. We also look forward to open for signature the third additional protocol to the European Convention on Mutual Assistance in Criminal Matters. We will also proudly celebrate the 35th anniversary of the Venice Commission, which reinforces rule of law as a cornerstone of democratic resilience and actively supports the work of the European Commission for the efficiency of justice. Solidarity with Ukraine will remain at the heart of our efforts, driven by a steadfast commitment to ease the suffering of millions of civilians caught in this conflict, including the Ukrainian children. And Malta remains firm in its commitment to continue supporting Ukraine's resilience, recovery, and reconstruction. We also stand ready to do our part not only to support but also advance pertinent efforts of the Council of Europe to seek justice and accountability. With the letter received today from Ukraine, we can now proceed with the establishing the Special Tribunal for the Crime of Aggression against Ukraine to ensure accountability for this heinous crime. Achieving a just and lasting peace remains the ultimate goal. We strongly hope for an agreement on an unconditional ceasefire. This remains an urgent first step to halt human suffering and also ensure genuine and meaningful peace talks. The Council of Europe reminds us that brute force, conquest, and authoritarianism led Europe to its darkest hour. And it also reminds us of what is at stake. It reminds us that it's also up to us to ensure that the promise of never again is not hollow, but enduring. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thanks first and foremost to the outgoing presidency, and special thanks to Xavier for this extremely accomplished ministerial meeting here in Luxembourg. And also my thanks go to Ian Borg and to Malta for being poised to take over. Just a couple of things that I would like to emphasize. First of all, that is that the Council of Europe has three priorities. Number one, support for Ukraine, and thank you for having reminded us of that with such force. Secondly, trying to make democracy flourish in the kinds of conditions we have to contend with today. And thirdly, making sure that we do justice to the diversity we have on the European continent these days. And it's important that here in Luxembourg, we recall the importance of our support to Ukraine. We are developing a special tribunal because democracy is also protecting everybody who safeguards democracy, and we've therefore opened for signature convention on the protection of the profession of lawyer, and that's an extremely important legal instrument. And we got the requisite number of signatures right from the off, from the first day. I don't have a great deal of experience in this myself, but I'm told that it is pretty rare for a convention to receive the requisite number of signatures right from the start, as is the case of this convention. And we very much hope that it will also receive signatories from elsewhere in the world. We've got representatives from Japan and other members of the press, and very much hope that they will also join us in signing up to that convention. A third very important aspect is making sure that we breathe life into this dialogue, something else that was recalled this morning. So I leave Luxembourg with a sense of gratitude. Gratitude, first of all, because all of those countries which preside over the Council of Europe bring with them their experience, and Luxembourg has been with the Council of Europe right from the start and has been unwavering in its commitment to the organization, and that is why I'm extremely grateful for everything that you have given us. And I'm also grateful to Malta, which has been presiding the OSCE recently on the Security Council and is now taking over in this very important role for the continent and for the organization as a whole. And I'd also like to thank Xavier for his generosity. He has been unwavering in his commitment, but you must remember that nothing would ever happen in our societies if we didn't give space for generosity, empathy, and a desire, a willingness to try and make progress, to do better than we have done so far. Empathy towards our people, empathy towards one another, and Xavier's generosity in all of his commitment. He really has been untiring in his efforts. And also commitment of the Grand Duchy as a whole, Ambassador Engelberg, the Committee of Ministers, Council of Europe, and over the last 6 months, he has really been far busier than an ambassador would normally expect to be. So once again, I'm extremely grateful to all of you for all of that hard work. I know that Malta will follow suit, but we have to be strong within and project our values to the outside. So cohesion is important, but yes, you talked about how important culture is. Something else that we should also mention, the fact that culture binds us, that it is a component of our identities, and something we set great store by within the Council of Europe, because we have our values and as well as our diversity, something that we project to the outside world. And we have various observers from throughout the world, and the European continent continues to stand as a beacon for certain values. And that is something that we would like to continue to do. And finally, if I may, I should like to thank all of those who continue to battle for democracy in the most difficult of circumstances. And I'd like to pay tribute to the presence of Svetlana with us here today, as Xavier has already done, as well as to representatives from Belarus who also have democratic aspirations, and tell them that they can count on us. Are there any questions?
Bonjour, Joseph.
Good afternoon, Joseph Gaulier. I'm from the Essentiel daily newspaper. Now, you talked about the proposal to set up a special tribunal to judge crimes in Ukraine. And I wanted to know whether the Council of Europe had gauged that there would be sufficient impact. I mean, what is the political weight of the Council of Europe? So have you concluded what the impact of this might be? Secretary General, well, things are pretty straightforward. So for over 10 years now, we're in a special situation today. We have Russia's aggression against Ukraine. The last 3 years, there has been a full-blown war of aggression. So what we want to do is support Ukraine, make sure it can withstand that war of aggression, then humanitarian assistance, humanitarian relief, and also taking in refugees throughout Europe. But above and beyond any of that, it comes down to a question of accountability. And the Council of Europe is really the only organization, multilateral organization, that can provide any kind of response to that. And I think that it is something which is in keeping with our times, because at some point in time, arms will be laid down as soon as possible, we very much hope. And that is when the whole issue of accountability will grow in importance. We've got, of course, the European Court of Human Rights, which deals with the violations of human rights in the course of the war in Ukraine, so dating back to 2014 and through to 2022. We also have a register of damage, and we believe the Council of Europe has a great deal of credibility and quality. We've got 23,000 different instances of damage which have been recorded to date, and that is most important for Ukraine as well as for the wider European family. We need to make sure there is a compensation mechanism and there's a way of making a start on reparations. Now, the crime of aggression was recognized by a United Nations decision in March of 2022, but it also at the same time found that there was no competent court to judge the crime of aggression. So it's one thing to recognize that such a crime exists. Then you need some kind of a judicial body to adjudicate. And that is why we worked on that, to create a special tribunal to try and hold Russia accountable, because we realize that in the world in which we live, we can't have violence, destruction, and impunity prevailing.
Puis, ah ben voilà, ça marche. Je vais...
Right, my microphone is working again now, and I'll be perfectly honest with you. 46 members around the table. And yet I know exactly, where things are going to blow up tomorrow. I know where the problems are. I mean, I could give you a long list of potential conflicts. I mean, you've got the Balkans, you've got neighbors who may fight one another. You've got a conflict as well between Azerbaijan and Armenia. You've only got Austria between them. Alphabetically, they are separated only by Austria. So, of course, there are potential flashpoints, parts of Europe where we run the risk of war in the future. I mean, just look at what is happening with Dodik in Bosnia-Herzegovina right now. Completely unacceptable. And that is why, of course, in either formal or informal events, we are able to talk to one another directly. It's no point, just hot air, sucking up to each other. There comes a point where we have to look each other in the face and tell the truth. Otherwise, we're going to see these flashpoints where conflicts flare up. I mean, I hardly need tell you that Kosovo wants to become a member. We've got an assembly which is pushing hard for Kosovo's accession, but we've got a committee of ministers which is divided, and there was a commitment, I think, by Kosovo on Serbian municipalities, but there are no advances. I mean, there's been no progress on the part of Kosovo. So you've got to try and steer a course between those competing interests. So good luck to you, Ian. but he wants things to be legally binding, until such time as they don't want these things to be legally binding. And it's up to the presidency, of course, to try, and find that compromise. And we got Greenpeace, and I thought it was important. They were demonstrating outside, and before I went into the meeting, yes, they were saying, yes, you must go in that direction. But what we have to do is to try and find a compromise, because we've got to try and muster the requisite number of votes to move in one direction or another. So I think that is the most important thing. Yes, do what we undertake to do, but the most important thing is to get people. I mean, we might share a continent, but we have different cultures, different traditions, even different ways of operating. Same when it comes to the signing of the Convention on the Protection of Journalists or Lawyers. Really, should journalists or lawyers have to question whether they can freely exercise their professions? But that's where they are, that's where we are, even within our countries. So, we have to make sure that we commit and sign up to things that we think should be taken for granted. So life isn't easy. I mean, that's the way I could summarize it in a nutshell. Is it a question for me? Because I'm going to be going very soon.
Hello, I'm Tamara Nutsubidze. I'm independent media outlet from Georgia, Euroscope. I want to ask you, to both of you, today here was Minister of Foreign Affairs from Georgia. You know that Georgian Dream adopted daily repressive legislation against opposition, against media, against NGOs. My colleague journalist, she's under arrested still. People more than 5 months is in the streets to fight for better European future. So what was and what is your message to Georgian Dream and also to Georgian people? Thank you.
Okay, but now I'm not the chairman anymore of the council, so for me it's difficult. If you want a position from the council, I can say it as a Luxembourgish Minister of Foreign Affairs. As a presidency, it's Malta, and as a boss is Alain. So I just can tell you that for me, Georgia, and I said it also very honestly to the Georgian part, that it was one of my biggest disappointments. The day we decided that they should have a European future, they decided to go backwards. And it's difficult because it's journalists, it's people, it's minorities, it's all the things where they said during months and years that they want to come closer to Europe, that the day we say, let's start the fiançailles, like we say in France, the honeymoon, they start a divorce procedure. So it's difficult. And we need to be honest with them that if they go the wrong way, they will go further of European future than it was the moment last year. That's my personal opinion.
Thank you. And of course, as incoming presidency, and also after serving as chair in office of the OSCE last year, I was in Georgia. I've met all the stakeholders, president, prime minister, my colleague, and also NGOs and civil society. So we look forward to engage and also to have a constructive dialogue. We will definitely support the Secretary General in his endeavors. Georgia made clear commitments to him in December 24, but it's also very clear that now they have to honor them. My colleague Xavier made his position clear, to which I concur, and it is clear that Georgia and its people it needs to be supported in order to reform and decide what they want for their country's future. So we look forward to work together, even though we know it's not easy.
Well, just for my part, thank you very much for the question. As you may know, I was also in Georgia in December. I wanted to have an impression of the situation, speaking with all possible parties and contacts in Georgia, and it is exactly what Xavier said before. 18 months ago, the statute of candidate to the EU accession was granted to Georgia. And 18 months later, we must note that the whole evolution that we witnessed in the recent months was a bad one, was not in the good direction. That's why, present in December, I tried to work specifically with Georgia, for the values, to have the necessary reforms, because we have a team working in Tbilisi. We have an action plan with Georgia working now exactly for this, to support the European aspirations of the Georgian population. It's exactly what we try to do. It was not a success, this try to have a working group working on different laws and amendments. And now we want to renew the dialogue, to work together, to have a structured dialogue, to be able to speak on all the points, knowing that it's not going in the right direction, because I'm strongly convinced that the next 12 months, they will be decisive for seeing in which direction it is possible to work and to go. Georgia is a member of the Council of Europe. We need to work together. We want to have evolution in the right direction. We want to have more convergence for the values, for the democracy and the rule of law. It's exactly what we do with the action plan. And but now it is a quite, demanding and quite concerning situation. And it is also our responsibility, to be the case with the new presidency, to do the best to have, again, a movement in the right direction and not in the wrong one.
So, are there more questions or not? Okay, so it's not for me. Good luck. I'm sorry, in 19 minutes my flight should depart, and they are all waiting for me. Thank you so much, and I leave you in very good hands. Bye-bye. Ciao.
So, Deputy Prime Minister, first of all, what is the significance of this presidency for Malta, even in the occasion of Malta celebrating its 60th anniversary in the Council of Europe, and which are the priorities you will be immediately pushing forward?
Yes, if you allow me, I'll reply in Maltese. Grazzi Massimo tal-mistoqsija tiegħek. Kif spjegajt għaddejjin allura issa għal din presidenza oħra importanti, organizzazzjoni li dejjem kienet fiċ-ċentru tal-politika barranija ta' pajjiżna, u kif smajna l-prijoritajiet huma bosta. Il-gwerra fl-Ukrajna, iżda mhux biss, jiġifieri sfidi oħrajn tad-demokrazija tas-Saltana Dritt. Rajna il-Belarusja, l-sfidi li għadhom kif tqajmu minn kollegi oħrajn, jekkux il-Ġorġa x'futur iridu, jekkux iżjed allinjati mal ħsieb u l-prinċipji Ewropej jew mod ieħor. Imma mbagħad għandek ukoll l-isfidi fil-komunitajiet tagħna, dawk li jitkellmu fuqhom in-nies u dawk li jaffettwawhom. Il-vjolenza, vjolenza domestika fuq in-nisa, it-tfal, u hawnhekk nerġa' nieħu spunt speċjalment fuq l-abbużi sesswali, manka dak li għandu x'jaqsam it-tfal Ukreni. Immanka żgħażagħ. Għandna eżempji pożittivi x'inwasslu lil sħabna l-Ewropej kif iż-żgħażagħ jistgħu jipparteċipaw biex ikunu parti mid-deċiżjonijiet li nieħdu illum mhux fil-futur, u għaldaqstant beħsiebna nipprioritizzawhom u nwassluhom matul dawn is-sitt xhur tagħna.
Sorry, thank you. I think it was an interesting moment, to see the outgoing presidency really physically fading out. And maybe it's also the signal that we should also stop with this press conference. Thank you very much for your presence this afternoon. Thanks.